Hello there and welcome to this technical overview of GaToR. GaToR may seem like a very basic device, but it's actually quite a complex device when you start configuring it up. But let's actually have a look at the basics to start with. In a basic setup, it has 1 to 8 steps, which we can control by the steps out. So just by moving the knobs down, we can reduce the amount of steps which we're going to use. We have a trigger in, and that trigger in will actually force us through each of the steps. We have an in. That in CV data can be anything you want, and from that in it will go to the out depending if the step is enabled or not. Obviously a restart here which will restart it back to the beginning, so if we're halfway through some steps it'll go back to the beginning. And we also have a step out, so the steps enabled you're going to get a 5-volt signal. If it's not enabled it gets a 0 signal, and goes on and so forth. And then at the bottom we have what's called a channel number and a global out, and some link information which I will talk about in depth in a moment, but let's just stick with the top half to start with. So as I said, we need some trigger data in to move through the steps. So I've actually happened to have a trigger gate over here, so I'm just going to take an input and put that into my trigger gate in. So as actually let's turn these on as well. You can see it more highlighted as it goes through, and it's just basically every time I hit the go, it's going to go through and either highlight or not highlight. So it's either going to let the signal through or it's not going to let the signal through. So that's obviously quite straightforward. Another design around this was I wanted to limit the amount of wiring which goes on, and you'll understand what I mean in a minute when I start to duplicate these devices up. So as I said, we can put any kind of signal in here. So you could put an LFO in here, so the gate's open, the LFO will be going, and obviously if the gate's close, you're just going to get a 0-volt signal. But what is also quite good is to actually put gate information into the in, and that's something which I like to use. So I'm just going to grab up my store and forward here, and I'm going to grab the gate out and put that into the gate in, and I'm actually going to disconnect the trigger, and there's this link off. So when I turn this link on, it's now using this in to drive the trigger. So when I turn this on, you can now see it's whizzing through the different gates, because obviously this has obviously got a setting of a 16th, so that's how fast it's going through. If I slow this down over here, you can see we can obviously slow down the step in over here. So it saves a bit of wiring going on. Now I'm going to take the global out, and by the way, I'll talk about the channel number in a second, but I'm going to take this global out just for a second, and I'm just going to go and wire this up. Let's wire it up into that one there, and I'm going to wire this one up into that one there, and I'm just going to very, very quickly get data in. So if we just highlight all the lights to start with, this will be equivalent of bypassing this device. This is what we got, which is coming out of the storing forward. And just by you can hear how much that's changed straight away just by gating that piece of information. But as I say, we're only touching the tip of the iceberg with this particular device, because where this power of this device comes in, okay, we've got 1 to 8 steps, but let's increase this. So the first thing we've got to do is we've got to select unique channel. So every separate GaToR has to have a unique channel, but every group of data has to have the same channel. So what I'm going to do now is make a group of GaToRs together. So I'm just going to hold down my Alt key and just make myself several GaToRs up. As you can see, they're all on step 17, which is really cool. I'm just now going to link them up, so it goes from the out to the in, the out to the in. From the very last one, I'm going to put that right over to the first one, the out to the in, and we're going to link them two together. So hopefully we've all got green lights, and you have to have a master device for this to work. So I'm going to make the first one the master, keep it nice and simple. Now obviously at the moment, let's randomize some of these steps up a bit, and I'm just randomizing by right clicking on the PoohBear at the bottom. I'm going to randomize this one a little bit more by just double left clicking. So double left click on PoohBear will just randomize the one you want. Right click on any device will randomize all the devices. Now if you noticed, I haven't done any other wiring. I've literally just wired these links up. But what's going to happen in a minute, I'm going to hit a reset and we're going to hit an out, and it's going to cycle through all of them. And if I hit my go here, I'm just going to hit a restart, and it doesn't matter where it is in this particular pattern, it will always restart back to where the master is. That's why it's important to set the master. So if we let it go, let's say when we're into this one here, there we go, just hit reset, reset, always goes back to the beginning. So when you start setting this up in this kind of mode, this is where the power of this device comes in. And at the moment, as I say, it's getting its gate data from here, and that gate data is also being passed throughout all the devices, and it's sharing the same gate data, and it's also sharing the same input data, which it'll be passed through and come out of the global out. Now, what you can actually do with this device, there's nothing stopping you taking a different speed and putting it into, say, this trigger here. So these two devices are going to run at the speed of this input, which happens to be this store and forward here, and then we can have something different. And I mean, obviously you could have an LFO running with a square on it to input it into there, and this then could be running at a different speed. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to cheat, is I've got my store and forward up. I'm just going to hold down the York key and make a copy of that right over here, and I'm going to really speed this up. I'm going to make it go really fast. And all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take that out, and I'm going to put it into the trigger in. So at the moment, what's going to happen is it's going to go slow, slow, fast, fast, and then it's going to go back to being slow again. And we've got to have that on, and we've got to have that on. Probably going a bit too fast that you can't actually even see it going. In fact, why don't we go the opposite way? And what's happening now is I've slowed it right down, and let me just close this off. So what was happening there is I slowed it right down, but obviously this CV data and gate data was actually also still being fired out. So it was actually being passed through, multiple gates were being passed through. So you've got to think of this device as like an outer gate to say yes or no, we're going to let the information through. And if I'm open to let the information through, it doesn't matter if 20 or 30 gates happen, i.e. it doesn't matter if one sheep goes through that gate or 100 sheep goes through that gate. It doesn't matter if a sheep goes through that gate like it's a long snake and stretches itself through the gate. This outer gate, or these devices here, don't care what the information is when that gate's open, what you want to pass through it. So the fact that I had it going really fast, it was like skipping through it and it's really hard to see. I've slowed it right down now, so when that gate's open, it's going so much slower than what's coming out of this device that you hear multiple bits going on each step. I don't know if that was very clear or not. So you can hear quite a bit going on. Now it's going to be quiet and quiet, quite a bit. So if we slow this down a little bit more. Now I've made this half the speed of that, so so that's per note. This is now going to be doing 2 notes per step. So as you can see, you can be quite creative, and you can also change the input. So you don't have to have this actual input. We can actually have a different input altogether. At the moment, as I say, we've touched on the global outs, and we've got these outputs as well, which are outputs per GaToR device. So it's only for this device will this output, whatever's coming in the in will come into the out. Obviously we've got an input here, so that's what will come out of this output here as well. And obviously these inputs will go over to these outputs. Now what makes that, say, a little bit more special is in some circumstances it may not make sense, say, to why would we want to have say like something like a simple one step. Well, we may actually want 9 steps, so that might be a reason why you just want a one step on its own. A GaToR with one step on its own just doesn't make any logical sense whatsoever, because it's either on or off and that's it, isn't it? It's not going to change. You've manually come in and you set it, so there's no point. But in this configuration, it may make a bit of sense, because obviously I could use that output and I could go anywhere with it. I could go over here and say, oh, I'm gonna plug into the gate length here, and I'm going to put modulation on that gate length only when this GaToR is hit. I'm just going to disconnect this one as well over here. So when we hit play, you can hear it opening up. It's going very quickly and you can just about see it. So that's why you might want to do something, say, on the individual 8s outs, and why you might only want to have one step amongst a group of GaToRs. As I say, this is a group, so they all have the same channel. You know, I could sort of grab another GaToR and I might just sort of grab that here. In fact, I'm going to create another 2 GaToRs. I'm going to change the channels. And in fact, I'm going to make them both the same channels. I'm going to just turn everything off very, very quickly for the moment. And we need some information to come in, so I'm going to use that gate information to come into here, and that information is actually automatically going to be passed over to this one, but they're not linked together. So where these stopped and went on to the next one, stopped and went on to the next one, stopped and went on to the next one, they're going to run at exactly the same time. So I'm just going to also put a restart in here. I'm going to put these 2 on here, and I'm going to take this out and I'm going to put it into this audio out here, and this audio out happens to be configured to go into Reason, and it's actually going to go into some drums in Reason. And the same with this one, I'm going to put it there. I'm not sure what sound I've got on this one. We'll find out in a second when we hit play. So if I now turn this on, just need to sync them all up. And when you think about it, all we had was a very basic sequence going on, and we're just taking obviously this pulse, and we're taking the GaToR, and we're obviously filtering it all through the different GaToRs here, and this is actually now building up a drum pattern. There's nothing stopping me putting these on different channels and linking them up, so I can actually build quite a complex pattern up. I have other devices which I actually like using, especially with the snare, which is one called a flip-flop switcher, so I can switch between 2 lots of different snares going on, depending if it's doing the end roll or whatever. But this is GaToR. It's a lot of fun, and I will be doing some other videos where I'll be getting creative and you can see it all wired up. So thank you for watching, and bye for now.